Hi, and welcome to this episode of the Drifting Pen podcast for voice guided Zentangle classes. For this class, you'll need a pencil, a pen. I'm using a Sakura PN black pen, a white square Zentangle tile, and a tortillon or something to blend the pencil with, and a white charcoal pencil. Optionally, you might want a pen with a thicker nib to color in spaces and a white jelly roll pen. So let's get started. Get your tile ready and pick up your pencil. We'll start by adding a few marks on the edges of the tile. The first mark we'll make will be on the left-hand side of the tile, about a quarter up from the bottom. And then continue to about halfway up and make another small mark. And finally, the next mark will be about 3/4 of the way up the tile. Now on the right side, make those same marks just on the opposite side. So these are here just to guide us drawing lines from one side of the tile to the other. So that's it for the pencil for now. Pick up your pen. The first line that we'll draw will be a wandering, meandering line from the bottom quarter marker on one side of the tile that finds its way to the other side of the tile, landing close to or on the mark you've left. And it can be a squiggly and jaggy line, and it can go up and it can go down, and then it just finally meanders and finds its way to the other side of the tile, landing on that mark or near the mark. It really doesn't matter. Now we're going to draw another squiggly, meandering line that doesn't need to be straight or make any sense, but we're going to draw that between the halfway marks. The line doesn't have to match the previous line, and it also just meanders and finds its way all the way over to the other side of the tile, landing on the opposite mark or near it. It doesn't really matter. And maybe now you've guessed it. We draw one more line at the top or 3/4 up from the bottom, making it another randomly meandering line that can go up and down. And even if your line falls to the line below it, use the drawing behind method and lift your pen up and then begin to draw that line continuing from somewhere else on that lower line there until it eventually finds the end or it finds the other side of the tile. So that's essentially our string, and we now have 4 sections, and 3 of them will fill with tangles. This tile is an exercise in drawing under and making some layering effects. You can also draw whatever tangles you like, or you can follow along with me. We're going to start drawing on the very bottom, so that bottom quarter of the tile, and we're going to draw jonquil. And you can draw jonquil with curved lines or straight lines. I'm going to draw curved lines. And I'm going to start with one slightly curved line that starts from the bottom of the tile and draw it all the way up until it meets the first jaggy line that we made. And then aura that line all the way across the tile. And those auras are somewhat wide, probably as wide as about the length of your fingertip. That first knuckle is probably about that size or about that length. Next, we're going to draw zigzag lines across those parallel lines to create the jonquil tangle. So starting all the way to the left, and it depends on where your lines are, but it doesn't matter where you start because you can aura these lines from the top or from the bottom. So you just start on one side and draw up or down depending on where you're going. So you're going to draw up towards the first jonquil spine, let's call them that, and then down to the next spine, and then back up to the next spine, and then down. And you keep going in that zigzagging motion until you reach the other side of the tile. So you're making mountains and valleys, let's say, zigzagging all across. And now we're going to just aura those. And you can make these auras as wide or narrow as you want. Jonquil usually has quite wide spaces, but you can manage that however you feel like, just auraing those lines all across to the other side. Now, the next step in Jonquil is to color in every other rectangle that's been created. So just pick any rectangle and fill it with black. And this is where your thicker nibbed pen might come in handy. Or you can hit pause and go through and slowly color in these spaces. And you can use the Knightsbridge method of filling in those squares by going from corner to corner, or you can just make sure that you are filling in every other space with black. So you can use one strip and color in every other block. And when you hit the jagged line or that border out from our string, you can imagine that this jonquil is just continuing underneath that line. Okay, and so that's it for jonquil. Let's move on to the next space or section above jonquil. And let's fill this one with diva dance. And we're going to use that middle line as our basis for diva dance and its aura. So aura that borderline, and then add random bits of black along that aura line. So you might find a corner or an edge that you can just fill in with black, or find another space on that line and make a little bump with black. So again, aura the line, and what happens is your aura changes because you've added some bumps and blobs of black. So the aura itself changes. And again, we're going to add little bits of black or blobs of black and continue on. And those aura lines, they can be quite close to one another. And if you find that those aura lines are a little too far apart, you just fill them up with some more black and then aura within them. So it's an easy fix if you don't like it. And when your diva dance gets to the jonquil section, draw under it holly-ball style. Okay, now let's move on to the next section, our last section to fill. And for this one, I've chosen to use tipple, and we're going to make tipple with big bubbles. So randomly add biggish orbs, not extremely big, but big enough so you can fit maybe 4 or 5 orbs in that space. And they can even fall under the diva dance section or fall under the edge of the tile, wherever you see fit. And then add smaller orbs around those big orbs. Just adding smaller orbs around the big orbs. And then make another round of orbs, but make them just a little bit smaller. And it may be that now your orbs start to crash up against each other, and that's fine. You can just smush them together, finding the spaces where they'll fit, and then add maybe another row of even smaller orbs all around each of those big orbs that we've added. And then you can fill in the remaining space with the smallest orbs. And this will add a concentration of black and adding a little bit of texture or even a wave-like pattern. So your space or your section might be bigger or smaller. So take your time filling in those orbs, and don't forget you can pause and just come right back and start where you left off. But for now, that's it for tangling. It's time to shade. So pick up your pencil again and start with the jonquil section and lay down graphite to the right of one of the spines, the ones that are going straight up and down. And adding graphite to uh, the right side of the spine and every other spine. So adding a little bit of graphite to the right of that one spine, skipping a spine, and then the next one, adding some more graphite. And once the graphite is down, you can pick up your blending stump and blend that out. You can bring that down towards the next spine. And now we're going to add heavy graphite to the top part of the jonquil border at the top there. So it might be useful to turn the tile so that your pencil point is up against the line that goes over Diva Dance. And my suggestion is to make that graphite pretty heavy. You want to really make sure the jonquil section lifts off of the paper. And we're going to push back that bottom portion of Diva Dance. So go ahead and add your graphite and then take a tortillon and blend it, making sure it's nice and dark and there's a separation between jonquil and Diva Dance. And then we're going to do the same thing to the borderline of Diva Dance. We're going to again add a heavy layer of graphite that goes right over those tipples. And when you're done laying that down, take the tortillon and blend it out, making a nice dark shadow behind Diva Dance. And then we'll add graphite above the line from tipple. And this one doesn't have to be dark because there's no pattern underneath of it. So you can go a little bit lighter here. And then blend that in. And once that's all blended, you can put down your pencil and pick up the white charcoal pencil. And let's add a little bit of white to the opposite side of where we shaded on jonquil. And that'll add a little bit more depth. And depending on your preference, you can add it down by any of the spines or whichever looks right to you, either at the top or at the bottom. And then we're going to add white charcoal to the top of the Diva Dance section so that it adds a bit of separation between Diva Dance and the tipple. And go ahead and blend that white chalk out if you want. Sometimes it's not necessary, so you be the judge. And finally, we're going to take our graphite pencil again and add some graphite to those sections of the tipple where they're more compressed with all the small orbs and add some shade there. Now, if you want, you can add a Zen gem into those bigger orbs, or you can make a quick water drop like tipple with a very simple method. And that's by putting some heavy graphite at the top of those orbs and then taking your tortillon and bringing that graphite down, but not reaching all the way to the bottom of the orb. You're just leaving a little bit of white, a little bit of crescent of white at the bottom there. Now you can also leave a little bit of white, a dab of white at the top. But if you've already gone over that, that's fine because we're going to come back with the white jelly roll and put in a little highlight there. So go ahead and do that for all of your large orbs. Or, of course, you can do a Zen gem or maybe add even another tangle inside there. And now let's pick up the white charcoal pencil and add some white charcoal to the surrounding areas of those large orbs so that it'll add a little bit more depth and hopefully pop up those Zen gems or water drops or orbs, whatever they are, and help to lift them up from the paper a little bit. And finally, you can take the Jelly Roll pen if you've got it there and add a little highlight to the top of your water drops there. They can be in the shape of like a rounded rectangle or just a little flattened orb. And you can also add a little bit, one thin line at the bottom of the water drop, that crescent, just to make it pop a little bit more. And with that, that's our simple tile for today. And thank you for tangling with me. And as always, feel free to share your tiles, your interpretation. And remember, there's no wrong way. Whatever you've heard and however you heard it, just go with it. It doesn't even have to match what I'm saying. What's important is that we were tangling together. And I wish you a wonderful day.